will you tell me 5 seconds before we start? Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, maybe good night. It's wonderful to see so many of you with us today. This is another great webinar hosted by the Economy of Francesco. And today we are really excited to have a wonderful guest, a friend of the Economy of Francesco, personally a heroine for the world. Kate Raworth, a renegade economist. And without any further ado, I am seeing that many of you are already using the menti.com to connect. It's wonderful to see how many people from different places. I can see Italy becoming bigger and bigger there, but also Brazil, Switzerland, Argentina, Portugal, Germany, Mexico, Singapore, India. Wow, Utrecht, Milan, Puebla, Pescara, USA. This is exciting to see so many, and it changes by the minute. So continue to stay connected through the menti.com. I would like to welcome and thank Professor Luigino Bruno, the Scientific Director of the Economy of Francesco. And I would like to ask him to put the video on now and help us with an introduction to this great webinar. Welcome, Professor Luigino.
Yes, thank you very much, Carlo. Thank you very much, everybody, in particular Kate Raworth, that for us is a very great honor to have her, one of the leading intellectual in the economic and social context today, really worthy intellectual and economist. That for this is one of the most important event in our webinar series that we started almost 1 month ago. Then I'm very, very happy and very grateful to her, and also to the village of the Inequality for organizing this meeting, to Luca, Carlo, Valentina, and all the staff of the team. And I would just to say two words.
Professor Luigino, I just wanted to ask to also Kate Raworth to put the video on, so that the two of you can be voila, and I can disappear for a second.
Yeah, sorry for the mask, but we are together with Florencia and Maria, and then we have to respect the social distances and the requirement of Italian government and most of the government today. We are also within this new moment of humanity. We are solidar with everybody in the world. And thank you, Kate. Just 2 words of to give just my contribution, just 1 minute before giving you the stage, the attention in the webinar. One of the issue of Kate Raworth in her activity is that production, GDP, the standard economic variables are not enough today for understanding what is going on in the world, for a good economy, for economy able of producing not only commodities but also well-being and so on. In the history, in the tradition of economics, there was an important economist, Thomas Malthus, that usually is important for bad stuff like the Malthusian approach to economics, to life. But also Malthus was a quite critique towards Adam Smith's wealth of nations. In fact, in his essays he wrote, Adam Smith inquiries in the nature and causes of the wealth of nations. This is the object of Adam Smith. But, Malthus said, there is another inquiry, however, perhaps still more interesting, which occasionally mixes with it, with wealth. I mean, an inquiry into the causes which affect the happiness of nations. Then the idea of happiness of nations, the idea of well-being of nations, that is very important in Kate Raworth analysis and theory, is one stream of the economic tradition, but not the mainstream, because the mainstream was based on utility, on other stuff. But today, there is, as we know, a recovering of the issue of happiness, the issue of well-being, thanks to economists like Easterlin or even Amartya Sen from another perspective. But we can say also today in the Economy of Francesco movement that even happiness is not enough, because happiness is too little for people. People want more, for justice, meaning, truth, rights, fraternity, freedom. And then happiness is important, but it's not enough for a good life. And then Kate Raworth is for claims for a multi-dimensional economy, and where also land, where also the nature, the environment takes an important place, and are not just sort of scenario where the economy and the economics plays. And then just the last word, land and nature has actually disappeared in modern economics. Because if we go back to the classics of economics, like Smith, Malthus, or Ricardo, for the whole, John Stuart Mill, for the whole 19th century, the factors were three, was capital, labor, and land. Land was very important in economics, but in the 20th century, land disappeared. And with this disappearance, also the concept of limitations, the concept of humility disappeared, because humility comes from humus in Latin. Humus means land, earth. And then our economy is not an humble economy, there is no humility, there is no humus. And then to take seriously again the issue of land, the issue of nature, the issue of environment is a way to make more humble our economy and our economics. Then I'm really thank Kate for being here with us, and I'm really looking forward to listen to her.
Hello, everyone. I am Luca Crivelli, health economist from Lugano, Switzerland, and I have the honor and the duty to short introduce Kate and to ask her the first questions. Kate uses to consider herself as a thinker, researcher, writer, teacher, and speaker, last but not least as a renegade economist. The reason of that is very simple. She devoted an important part of her professional life to overcoming the reductionism of mainstream economics and to exploring the economic mindset which is necessary to address the social and ecological challenges of the 21st century. Kate developed, in fact, a different narrative for the economic transformation that she expressed by using the popular image of the donut, a concept that helps to recall the social and planetary boundaries we have to live in. Kate currently teaches at Oxford University and is a senior associate at the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership. She has previously served as senior researcher at Oxfam in the UK and at UNDP in New York. She's finally one of the keynote speakers of the Economy of Francesco event in Assisi. The scientific committee of EOF is very grateful, Kate, that you are devoting your time and energy today to our constituency, and that you are willing to share your view on how we can build a more regenerative and inclusive economy. We ask the audience of this webinar to watch your 2018 TED Talk in order to arrive somehow prepared with respect to the topic of donut economics. However, since we do not want to leave anybody behind, I think that a short recap, 2-3 minutes, might be useful to start. So, Kate, can you please give us a summary of what donut economics is about?
Sure, thank you, Luca, and it's great to join you here. I was looking forward to those days in Assisi, as we all were, and they were suddenly cancelled. So it's great that we can reassemble here online. So donut economics. Well, first of all, you don't have to eat donuts. In fact, you probably shouldn't. This is the one donut that actually turns out to be good for us, and it's a conceptual donut. So you can see one on the door behind me, but I have another one here ready for playing ping pong with Carlo, as we've promised. So you can think of it as a compass for the 21st century. I'll hit you first with my bat and ball, Carlo. So think of it as a compass for the 21st century. The 20th century compass was essentially endless GDP growth. The notion that success is in ever-growing GDP. And I think many things have told us this is not nearly a good enough symbol of prosperity and success and well-being this century. So this I propose as a new compass. So you can imagine humanity's use of Earth's resources radiating out from the middle of this picture, which means that the hole in the middle of the donut is a place where people are falling short on the essentials of life. It's where people don't have the food and water and healthcare and education and housing and political voice that every person has a claim to. So we want to get everybody over the social foundation into the green donut ring itself. Nobody left behind in the hole. But there's another side to the story, which is we also cannot overshoot the outer ring, because there we collectively put so much pressure on this unique and delicately balanced living planet that we begin to push the planet out of balance, and we cause climate breakdown, and we acidify the oceans and create a hole in the ozone layer, catastrophic biodiversity loss. So these are the 9 planetary boundaries, the 9 critical life support systems that make Earth such a home sweet home for humanity, humanity's Garden of Eden, you could say. So the goal is to leave no one falling short in the hole without overshooting the outside. It's to meet the needs of all people within the means of the planet, to live in this green space. And that means we have to transform our concept of development, because billions of people still live in this hole, and we have already overshot the outer boundaries. So models of development from the past won't get us there, because they never tried to do this. They never aimed to do these 2 things at the same time. We have to reinvent, rethink, and recreate anew for our own era. And for me, at the heart of donut economics are 2 dynamics. First, we've inherited economies that are divisive, that drive the returns of economic value into the hands of a 1%. And we need to make them distributive, so that value is shared far more equitably with all who co-create and use it. And secondly, we've inherited economies that are linear and degenerative, the hose pipe of production. And we need to turn them into circular economies, regenerative ones, where resources are never used up, they're used again and again, far more collectively, more carefully, more creatively. So those to me are the 2 dynamics that we need to transform, and they run through the way we redesign government regulation, the design of markets, the design of the commons, of our institutions. And it's an amazingly exciting time to be part of rewriting economics, because we know the old economics is being pulled from under our feet.
Thank you so much, Kate, for this very inspiring introduction. I would like to ask you a second question, more related to the time we are living through. I think one of the unintended effects of the COVID-19 pandemic is a global economic crisis that we have in face of us. And this crisis will probably have a strong negative impact on the most vulnerable, a further increase of inequalities, and maybe might divert the attention of the citizen from the climate change emergency. So I remember that 2 months ago, many young people were still doing the Fridays for Future, asking for a better attention towards the nature and towards the climate. But now it seems that everything is disappeared because of this health crisis. What are, in your opinion, the most serious challenges that the donut economics will have to face after this health crisis, if the goal remains that of moving society towards becoming agnostic about economic growth?
So first, I don't think Fridays for the Future have disappeared. I see them very active online. They are maintaining that, organizing as best as they can, and I have no doubt they will spring back into action when we're permitted to retake to the streets.
Maybe, but sorry if I interrupt you, they disappeared from the TV and from the media. This was for me a concern,
yes,
that nobody's speaking about these very important strikes.
Right. And yet when I talk with, so climate change may be far less prominent in the media, but when I talk with city mayors, with policymakers, they are holding all of it in their head at the same time. And I think we need to take a slightly longer view than the last 3-4 months that we've all been completely absorbed in this pandemic for many good reasons. But we need to take a longer view. I want to just look merely at the last 20 years, which is still incredibly short term. The beginning of the 21st century has been racked by crisis. We began with financial meltdown, which led to a decade of austerity and real impacts in people's lives in many, many countries. It's in a context of climate breakdown. We are seeing floods and droughts and fires in the richest of countries, in the poorest of countries. And now this is redoubled by COVID lockdown. So we have begun the 21st century in an era of repeated crisis. And when I speak to policymakers, they hold all this together. There's no good in coming up with a recovery plan from COVID that exacerbates the climate change crisis that's already upon us. It's no good coming up with a recovery plan that just goes for growth if it leads us back into that consumer debt-driven mortgage crisis of 2008. So I hear smart policymakers saying, are there frameworks that enable me to take a holistic view across all of these? And that is partly why they're turning to the donut, because it includes income and work, it includes housing and health and climate change. It's all in there. We need to manage these things together. And then, of course, yes, many economies have been shut, literally shut, forced shut, because much market-based activity depends upon people being able to congregate, and that's been banned. So incomes have been collapsed in that sense, which is devastating for many, many people's livelihoods. As we recover, as we renew, and I believe we need to renew our societies and the living world through economic transformation. Some countries will just bounce back, push back for what they had. And I think they'll find they're stuck in an old system. And other countries are very smartly saying, we already knew we wanted to transform. And nobody wished it happened this way, but this is throwing upon us a seismic shift in government policy making, in government spending, and we will only get to spend this once. I've heard very senior policymakers in the European Commission saying, we will only get to do this big budget once. We cannot do COVID recovery and then later come back and do climate investment. There won't be more. So we have to do these together. And we need to just stand back and say, is there work to be done? Yes, there is work to be done. And there's new work to be valued, the key workers of care, of delivery, of education. That is work that must be valued, which has been undervalued in the past. So is there work to be done? Yes, let's invest in the work that's to be done. Is there transformation we already knew we wanted? Yes, let us make that transformation. And let's actually build back with a vision, with a positive vision of where we want to go. So I see smart policy makers recognizing this is that seismic shift. This is that disruptive moment. It's not the one anyone wished, but now we have to realize it's this and seize it.
Thank you so much. I would like to hand over the floor to Valentina. Please, Valentina, put your video on, and I disappear from the screen. So,
hi.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Kate. It's super nice to have this opportunity to have you here with us. And hello, everyone online. Hello to the youths from the Economy of Francesco, and everyone is looking. So I have maybe a silly question for you. We live in a world of growing inequalities, and we know that the best explored inequalities today related to economic variables such as wealth and income. But those inequalities are not the only ones that are relevant or important if we wish to build a new economy and a new world where no one is left behind. There are inequalities that are related to health, life expectancy, educational attainment, well-being, but also functioning and capability, social support, ecology, democratic power, and also the use of new technologies such as internet or mobile phones. Well, all these inequalities are related. They are completely interrelated, and your work shows this in a fantastic way. But imagine now that you have a magic wand, and you can erase one of those inequalities. We should start somewhere. Where would you start from?
Give me your wand, I need it. Well, it's not a silly question at all. It's a very profound question because, as you said, inequality is it's a dynamic that we see. It's the opposite of distributive design. It's this divisive design. And our economies have been designed in many ways to capture value for those who already have value captured. And that's a reinforcing feedback loop. The rich get richer and the poor get poorer. And it happens through multiple dimensions, not just through money, but through health and ownership, as you said. So first, we need to recognize that unlike 20th century economic theory that told us that inequality is a necessity and that things have to get more unequal before they can get more equal, the famous Kuznets curve, which turned out to be completely false, we have to start by recognizing that inequality is a failure of economic design and that economies can be designed to be far more distributive. So I think at the root of it is the need to distribute the capacity to generate wealth. Now that sounds very abstract, but it means individuals having the capacity to generate income. So having, I think the ownership of who owns the land, who owns the technology, who owns the businesses, who owns the power to create money. These are big questions of ownership that drive the deep roots of inequality. But for me, I go with Amartya Sen in terms of the fundamental capabilities, because the fundamental wealth of every person lies in their having bodily health and having education. Without those two, a person doesn't have the capacity to engage further, to engage in active work, in wealth creation for themselves and their family and community, in community dialogue, in political dialogue. So I go back to the absolute roots of it. It's about universal access to healthcare and education, free at the point of delivery in every country. I believe that's one of the most fundamental resets that humanity can create from generation to generation.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you. And well, I leave the floor to Carlo, who's going to introduce us toward next.
I'm so happy today because actually my role is to be the funny guy today. So
I'm with you.
Kate, wow, what a start. I love it. And meanwhile, we have been asking the audience about the first question, why the ping pong? Well, ping pong, why that? The idea is really today to, when I spoke to you, I knew that you also had questions for all the audience.
And a ping pong bat.
And a ping pong bat. So the idea was really, how can we use the Economy of Francesco and the donut model to mobilize, to help, to support the work that nobody can stop around the world anymore. There's so many people engaged, inspired by the right frameworks, by the right people to do so much. And in the past days, when we asked for questions, I wish I didn't do that for you, we received literally dozens and dozens of questions. So what we try to do now is to do a little bit of a ping pong, where I have selected some of the questions that all the wonderful participants of the Economy of Francesco sent us, and they will vote which question they really want to ask you right here, right now. And after that, we'll do the opposite. You will be asking a question to them. Hence, the ping pong. Yes, Kate.
And just can I say that to me, this design of a webinar is the opposite of centralized by design. Centralized by design would just be me sitting here talking. Why? I mean, why, you know, dialogue is so much more interesting, the back and forth. So I jumped on the idea when you said, let's do it like a ping pong, because we can use these technologies in smart ways. And to me, again, this illustrates everything we're doing. We have technologies that enable us to be distributive by design. So let's use them and let's make this a distributive dialogue where we can go back and forth and learn more collectively together. So that for me is what the ping pong means. And heck, it's fun. I mean, I never got to tweet before that I'm going to play ping pong for the Pope. I think it's a one-off life chance.
I love that tweet. So if everything goes well, and by the way, we do have a slight problem, which is compared from the Zoom conversation and the YouTube live, there is always around 10 seconds of delay. So we will manage with that. What we see now on our screen is the first pool of questions that I've selected that among those that the participant wanted to ask you. So we have question number 1, how can we concretely get back into the donut and redistribute wealth to eliminate inequalities? Question number 2, how can we put together the need for growth of developing states and the fragility of our planet that cannot take any more growth? And question number 3, without growth, we get hyperinflation and growing debt. What is a good financial system for the donut? Now, normally, when you see a graph like this, what you would do, you would pick the question with the highest percentage and say that's the one we're going to answer. But because we are rebels by nature, and because we love inequalities, we will actually start with a question that has taken the least votes, that should not be ignored. Okay, Kate. So thanks for that, for taking that question. How can we put together the need for growth of developing states and the fragility of our planet that cannot take any more growth? Meanwhile, I will be sending the next question to the audience. So they prepare and they start voting for that. Are you okay with that question?
Sure. Yeah. And actually, I'm really glad we're asking that one, because to me, it's a very, very important one to clarify. Let me just say that in donut economics, when I talk about being agnostic about growth, what that means is that what we're actually for is thriving. This is the definition of what we're for. We're for everybody in the world living over this social foundation of meeting their essential needs and finding a way as humanity to do that for 7, 8, 9, 10 billion people. How many are we going to be within these planetary boundaries? That to me is the goal. And our growth, when we talk about growth, we tend to mean income growth, national income growth as measured by GDP. And I want to start with the real thriving of humanity, and then growth is just a measurement that captures some value that's generated in the economy, only value that's generated through marketed goods and services through either the private sector or the state. It's not all of the value that's generated. But let's come to the point. Okay, so the 20th century is based on the idea that economic growth will look like this. It just goes up and up and up and up off the screen. And if you listen to policy prime ministers and presidents talking about the economy, they talk as if success is just higher, up there, more of that, 3% a year, please. If we could have it, that would be really nice, because that's what was normal in the second half of the 20th century. And this is the norm, no matter how rich a country already is. I mean, there's just something completely extraordinary about that just as Zambia and Bangladesh are pursuing growth, so is Canada and Australia and Japan. The richest countries in the world think that their success lies in yet more growth. We have to ask ourselves, can that make sense? Now, this is how we imagine economic success, but growth in nature is nothing like this. Now, let's just recognize that growth is a wonderful, healthy phase of life, right? Any parent knows they love to see your children grow. That's a sign of their health, because they're children, they're growing. I have 11-year-old twins, they're growing very fast. They're becoming almost as tall as me. At some point, they will stop growing taller and they will grow kinder, more communitarian, more creative, more talented, more thoughtful. but they won't just keep getting taller. That's natural. So in nature, nothing does this forever. Nature grows like this, the S curve, the logistic curve. Now, what if it meant that our economies should grow like this too? And that means, now let me distinguish between economies. Now let's talk about high income and low income states, right? Some high income economies, maybe they're up here. I'm using my nose as a third hand, right? High income economies, maybe they've gone too high. Maybe they've actually overshot planetary boundaries, and they need to totally transform their economies to come back within planetary boundaries. Some economies may be here, some middle income economies that have really pursued growth and actually now need to move away from that endless pursuit. But there are some that are here at the bottom of the curve, and I'm talking about Zambia, I'm talking about Bangladesh, I'm talking about Malawi, countries that have people absolutely living in this hole of deprivation. And the first and most important thing is for those people to get out of that hole and to find out ways that have never been done before so that we collectively stay within planetary boundaries. Those countries, of course, must have economic growth. I fully expect them to grow. And that's why high-income countries need to get out of the way and come back within planetary boundaries. They need to come to zero carbon emissions far sooner than 2050. My country, the UK, we were the first nation into the Industrial Revolution. We have a moral obligation to be the first out, and far sooner than 2050, because we need to make space for low-income countries. So it's not about saying no growth. We need to look at, that's why you need to be agnostic. It's relevant to different countries at different stages of that development towards meeting the needs of all people.
Wow, yes. So I think that was a wonderful answer, Kate, to that question. Meanwhile, our wonderful audience has been voting for the next question for you. So I'm still keeping the ball here. Not yet your turn. There's one more question from our audience. We have so many questions, Kate. And it's a mix here, okay? So hence the title, What the Donut Mix. It's not only about growth. And the three questions are, getting into the donut will be challenging. Is there any kind of hierarchy between the various goals that can help with priorities? The second question is, what do you think of Soviet economy, which was distributive by design, but failed to provide adequate quality and diversity of goods and services? And the third one is, in order to change the priorities of business, do we need a big bang or a series of small steps in the right direction? Do you have any examples? So I have probably upset the majority with the previous question. I'm not going to do that twice, because again, inequalities doesn't mean all of a sudden create a disbalance on the other side. I would like to try and honor the majority this time with the question number 3. In order to change the priorities of business, do we need a big bang or a series of small steps in the right direction? Do you have any examples? And meanwhile, no, actually, we might be able to pick 2 questions from here. Let's see how that goes.
Okay, so I can't resist question number 2, and I'm going to use it to go to number 3. So the Soviet economy, it aimed with with a really strong intention to be distributive by design in its outcomes, but it was centralized by design in its production. And therefore it missed the extraordinary capacity of signals from people who can supply, information. It had very poor information distribution. We have totally different technologies today. We have distributive internet. Look at us right now having a conversation across countries. We have renewable energy networks. We have communication networks. We have distributive production networks. So we don't have to be Soviet and we don't have to be capitalist. We can be something completely different, and let's create a new name for it. But it's crucial to realize that we can produce in different ways. And now I want to come to business, because I believe that small scale market-based enterprises will be a very important part of the future economy. I think markets are valuable. They don't necessarily lead to runaway capitalism. What matters, and I'm so glad I have my sign with me, what matters is the design of business, right? So I'm often in conversations with companies that might say, oh, tell us how we should make our smartphone. Is it sustainable? Is it ethical? How do we make an ethical hand cream? How do we make an ethical pair of sustainable sunglasses? And I'll say, you can talk all you like about the design of your products. What I really want to talk to you about is the design of your company, the design of your very enterprise. There are 5 design traits that I learned from a brilliant author called Marjorie Kelly, who wrote a book called Owning Our Future. I really recommend it. And here they are, 5 design traits for business, okay? So any company that you love or hate, that you work for, you're joining or leaving, interrogate it, be a detective about that business and ask yourself, what is its purpose? Why does it exist? What is it in service to? There are so many purposes that need enterprise in the 21st century. It should darn well have a good, clear social purpose. Secondly, how does that company network with its suppliers, with its employees, with its local communities? Does it make sure it builds relationships with them that reinforce its purpose and values, or actually does it get drawn away by hiring and putting pressure on suppliers to be cheaper and faster and more flexible? So how is it networking towards a generative future or an extractive one? Third key, how is the company governed? Its rules, principles, practices, the culture inside the company, the incentives. How are executives paid? How are middle managers incentivized? The company might have a really great regenerative purpose, but if you look down to middle management, they're just incentivized on sales and turnover and profit margins. So there's a real conflict between these. Now let's get down to the serious stuff. How is the company owned? Because if a company is owned by its employees, by its founding entrepreneur, by venture capital, by a family, by shareholders, by the state, all of these, this comes back to ownership, as I was talking about earlier, all of these different ownership designs have really different implications for finance, and the finance that's coming into that company and why it's coming into that company and what it's demanding and expecting. And is the finance saying, I'm investing in you because I want a high and fast return, highest and fastest returns as possible, please. And if they seem to be falling, I'm out. I'll just sell. Or is that finance investing in you because it says, I share your purpose. I believe what you're trying to bring about in the world. I want to see social value. I want to see environmental value. I want a fair financial return. And what fair is a very big question. But these design traits really matter. And some companies, I would say 21st century companies that are aiming to bring us into the donut, they start here. Some companies, I show them the donut and they say, that could be our logo. That's why we exist. We exist to bring health to communities in Kenya, think Sanergy toilets. We exist to restore the living world while creating beautiful sportswear, think Houdini clothing in Sweden. They start with purpose and they ensure that they design their networks, their governance, ownership, and finance so it's compatible with their purpose. But so many companies are essentially driven by finance. If you're in the boardroom, the conversation is around finance, and we have to, and because of the ownership. And so we have to tweak the governance, and we have to shift our networks, and we have to do a bit of a greenwash on our purpose to satisfy the demands of finance. So do we need a big bang? I don't know. We really need a big detective job, and we need regulation that stops this from being just the nice to have of the good companies to becoming the driving force that all companies have to redesign themselves so that these design traits point us to a generative future. So I think it's a very important and exciting time for the redesign of companies. That do?
Now, I really have a very, very important and serious question for you, Kate, before I give you the ball. Is that Mary Poppins bag that you seem to have on your side available on sale for anybody? I mean, you keep coming out with the new different pieces right and left. I love it.
So this is the circular economy. This is just a bit of old cardboard, right? Anybody can make this, but I made these because I realized I'm going to spend quite a lot of my life on Zoom now. So instead of endlessly switching to slides, I can have
the pipe and then the big star and wow, and the bath.
It's got to be fun reinventing the economy, right? I mean, calling it donut economics made people know that it's going to be fun in the first place. So I'm just going to keep having fun.
Awesome. So here is the ball for you.
Thank you. Got it.
And it's your time now to ask a question to the audience. And you might want to say that question yourself.
Okay, so whenever I teach the donut to students, first introduce the concept to them. I invite them to, we know that we are far out of the donut at the moment, and I say, what do you think are the major determinants that are stopping us from living within the donut at the moment? And we could make these answers incredibly complex, or we could say, come on, boil it down to the essence of what you think is driving this, so that you could express it in 1 or 2 words. So what is it that's stopping us as humanity from achieving this? So we've got a wonderful
the Wordle is coming out.
Okay.
And feel free to look at it and pick some of the words that you can see there. I can see there greed, egoism, selfishness, individualism, money, power, ignorance, egocentricity. Wow.
So some of these traits: individualism, selfishness, egoism, fear, egocentricity. So some of these are about the traits of an individual. And to me, this is really interesting, because anyone who's studied economics knows that the character of humanity that we are taught at the heart of economic theory is rational economic man. And he's pretty much like that. He's got, he's totally independent. He's not influenced by other people. He's driven by utility, which is a proxy with money. He's driven by ego, his wants and his desires. He's endlessly calculating. Am I getting the best return for my money here? He's not emotional. And so it's as if the character that we're told is humanity is coming back at us, because we also know that that's not who we are. Students, economic students, are hugely influenced by this character. The more they learn of him from year 1 to year 2 to year 3 of their studies, the more that economic students say they value competitiveness over collaboration and self-interest over altruism. But actually, we're the most social of all animals. We cooperate, we share, we queue, we help strangers. And if this pandemic era has taught us one thing, it's that neighborhoods connect and people support each other. So there's the redefining of who humanity is and actually observing ourselves in practice. But then also many people were pointing out the economic system, capitalism, structures of the economy. And I agree. I think we have an economy that is designed to extract value rather than to regenerate value, that's designed to capture value in the hands of those who get to design the economy, in their hands, driving it to a 1%. I hear that Jeff Bezos is about to become the world's first trillionaire. That's a design that we've allowed to happen. So we need to transform that system. And again, for me, that's why I go to the organizational design. If you want to transform a system, you need to look at the design traits of its organizations, its companies and its governments and its universities and its NGOs and its community groups. We can use these to look at all organizational designs and ask ourselves, are we designed to be generative or extractive? And where do we need to transform?
Super. Are you willing to throw the ball back?
Okay, the ball is coming back to you now.
Here we go. For some reason, the ball becomes yellow when it comes.
Magic.
That must be some sort of magic. Wonderful. By the way, I was looking at the word and the word greed becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Yes, you really have a point there about the rational man, economic man. So you give me back the ball, which means I will be now again going back into selecting a question for you. So there were a lot of questions that were asked in the past days about what can I do as an individual, as I am inspired by the donut. Where do I start? What can I do? So I try to summarize all those questions. And again, I would like to make a public apology to all the hundreds of people that have been writing questions. And Kate has had access to all of them. And I promise you that she's been looking at all of them in preparation of today. So whatever she's saying, she's practically, with an algorithm that is encoded in her head, she's replying to all of them. right? And I am sure that's happening. So, but again, we couldn't really show all of the questions. Sorry, you wanted to say something, Kate, about that?
No, I'm just watching this very tight horse race on the screen between the questions.
Yeah, it shows like they're very good questions, all of them. So the three questions here are, can you suggest a lifestyle? And maybe we make it, you give it a try to answer all of them. Let's see how that goes. Can you suggest a lifestyle for the young generations that fit with the donut? You have an answer for that?
Well, well, actually, I can tell you that there's a website going to be launched soon. Oh, I wish I could give you their exact name. Something Quest. It's going to be a website that says, do you want your life to live within 1.5 degrees? Keeping your life so that you're living within less than 1.5 degree changed world. And it says, okay, if you want to do that, you get out of a car, you don't buy a new car, you travel on public transport, you take a long haul flight once every 7 or 8 years only, a short haul flight only once or every 2 or 3 years, you downscale the size of your house, you buy clothing once a year, go vegan. So it's a really interesting pledge that's coming soon that people can say, wow, that feels really strong. Let me just try this for 3 months. And of course, lockdown has enforced actually some of this on many of us, and people are finding it sometimes a pleasant change. I want to recognize that many people's lives are extremely difficult in these times, and others realize there's something pleasant about a slower, simpler life as well. So yes, but actually, you know what, I want to answer, they're so close. I want to answer all of them. And for this, I am going to share a slide. And if anybody's got an idea of how I can...
So I can get rid of those questions?
You need to answer, don't you? Yeah, I'm going to answer them all.
Okay, good. So maybe I'll read them aloud once.
Okay.
More and more people don't want to go back to normal because they think that normal was broken. How can we build back better as citizens? And the third one, what suggestion can you give to a low, no-budget local community that want to act for the donut? Okay.
Great. So
I'll stop sharing my screen. You go with your screen.
Lovely.
Cool.
Thanks. So for this, I haven't yet managed to make a Mary Poppins picture of this. Anybody got nice ideas? Maybe I could just draw this on a stick. But this to me is the first and biggest diagram of the economy. It's where I always start. So we recognize that the economy is a subset of society. It is entirely a social construct. We designed it, we created it, we can redesign it and recreate it. And society, human society, is embedded within the living world. And we're drawing in materials and matter, spewing out waste and pollution. We're bathed in a river of solar energy. So that for me is the big picture of economics that makes us ecological economists from day one. But look inside the economy. We've got the market, where mainstream economics always starts with supply and demand. Hello, welcome to economics is supply and demand, as if that was the economy. No, it's one part of the economy. We've got the market and the state, and this was the 20th century obsession. This is where we measure GDP growth because it's monetized value. And capitalism, communism got caught up in a back and forth battle between market and state. And so caught in that battle was the 20th century that we failed to see two other fundamental forms of provisioning. And the first is the household, where we've all literally been locked down for weeks in our households, in our family units, and realizing that the pressure then of care, because there's so much care and provision. I'm homeschooling my kids. There's care for the sick. There's care for food and cooking and shopping and cleaning, all within the household. That is invaluable to human well-being. And there's the commons. This is the place where people come together, not through the market, not through the state, but as a community, co-creating value. And I live on a street in Oxford that was never connected before. I always was really actually very sad that my street didn't have a real sense of community. And at the beginning of lockdown, we went door to door, we passed out phone numbers, we created a WhatsApp group. We are now connected, chatting, friendly. We've never seen each other's faces in person, but we're a community and we have a commons in our street. So to me, it's really important to start by recognizing that the economy is acting in all these four spaces. And I would not want to live in a society that lacked any of them. The Soviet economy did not have the market. It's a huge loss because it's a very valuable form of acting. a sort of free market, so-called economy, would minimize the state. Well, we see what happens when the role of the state gets minimized. It's a huge loss of public good and provisioning. We need the household, we need the commons. So we need to reclaim our economic identities. As I just said, 20th century economics told us we are rational economic man, because when economics starts with the market, well, we show up as consumer or producer. We are shopping or working, or shopping or working. And when we bring in banking, we are creditor or debtor, or we're capitalist or labor. And this is such a narrow vision of who we are, and the values in this sphere are self-interest and competition. And in fact, if you want to find a rational economic man, these kind of buildings, these shopping malls, are built for us as consumer. Come and buy, come and consume, be tempted by the brands, by the image. And they actually, I think, bring out often the worst in us. And people get quite addicted to going shopping again and again. But if we, and they don't satisfy our fundamental human needs. But much of 20th century marketing, advertising told us, come and buy these brands. Here you will find creativity, belonging, identity, purpose, participation, and it's not true. Let's reclaim our economic identities. When we bring in the state, the household, and the commons, we suddenly realize we have these multiple identities. As resident or citizen, I like that in the question, but let's be inclusive of all people living in a place. As a resident, public servant, we are hugely dependent upon them, especially medical professionals right now. As voter and protester, there's Fridays for the Future right there. In the household, we're parent, guardian, relative, child, huge workload going on there now. And in the commons, we are co-creators and sharers and repairers and stewards. So my main message, actually, and it runs across all of these questions, is first start by reclaiming your multiple identities, because most of us weave in and out of these roles every day, often without naming them. But the market tells us you're a consumer. No, I'm not a consumer. I'm actually a citizen, or I'm a public servant. I'm a protester. I'm a creator. I'm a sharer. And I think particularly the roles of the household, but especially the commons. This is the place where people are rediscovering, creating make spaces, connecting the community. Again, we can use technologies to connect us. And once we step into the role of the commons, we can make and repair and share, and it has deep social relations. So for me, saying what are the commons in my community and how am I engaged as a commoner? What are my roles in the household, and what's the equitable distribution of household roles? Traditionally, they fell upon women. How are they being redistributed? What's my role in relation to the state? How will I protest? How will I vote? How will I volunteer? How will I lobby? And what am I buying? And can I shift that? Can I shift my bank account? Can I shift my energy source? Can I shift what I choose to food to put in my body? So for me, it begins here, recognizing our power in every one of these spaces and our multiple economic identities.
Wow. Okay. So meanwhile, while I was trying to multitask, listening to you and prepare for the next one, and of course I failed because I'm a boy, but never mind. If I am not wrong, I have the ball here.
You have the ball.
And so it's time for me to pass the ball to you. Here we go.
Got it.
Got it. So you do have a question now for us. Let me share the screen. And, oh, okay. Let me, 1 second. Yeah. Yes.
Can we, okay.
So
yeah, that's it. Let's start here.
Yes,
so
that's the question you have for us.
So here we go. Here's my question. It's a game that I often play with students and in workshops. This is the first time it's ever been played online. So you are part of a world premiere playing Take a Stand online. So I'm going to invite you to take a stand. Take a stand on one of these positions. I know the question is very big. I know we can add lots of nuance, but come on, just take a stand. So can humanity get into the donut by 2050? It's not will humanity, it's can humanity get into the donut by 2050. That means meeting the essential needs of all people in the world while coming back within those planetary boundaries. Can we eliminate all the red in this picture? And you've got to take a stand. No standing on the lines. Well, go back, go back.
Oh.
We don't want to see that yet. Okay, so you're going to take a stand. Either, yes, we can. You really believe that we can do this. Not that we're already going to do this, but we can do this. Or no, we cannot. You might believe it's not possible. It's just not feasible. Or, well, whether or not we can do it, we should be aiming to get into the donut. Or whether or not we could do it, we shouldn't actually be aiming for this donut at all. It's not the right goal. We should be aiming for something else. So while I've been talking, I hope more of you will have been taking a stand, take a position. You don't have to believe it with all of your heart, but try it out for size and see if you get persuaded to change your mind. So let's see, where are you taking a stand?
So here is where people are going as we speak. We see a lot of people there moving and looking for their own space.
That's a lot of ping pong balls.
Oh, yes, they are. And I know on the YouTube, we have hundreds of people. On Menti, I can see a little bit more than 100. So I really would like to invite again people. I want to stay on this question for a little while to go on. If you have a mobile phone, that will allow you to watch and at the same time vote.
And then while people are voting, I'm just going to point out again, because we're such social beings, there's a lot of research that shows that people tend to go where other people are. So resist the bias of the group. And if you want to say no, or we should aim for something else, step in. There's already people there. You won't be alone. Step in. Don't feel that you need to go to the safe space. We can't see who everybody is anyway. So go wait. Yeah, there's somebody else just joined. We cannot.
This time online can help with that kind of biases, that kind of unconscious behavior.
Yep.
We are all isolated in our room. We can be courageous and say, no, we cannot.
So I just want to start by saying, for the number of times I've played this game, this group is distinct in that we've got most people on the top side, which is we can or we should aim for it in that positive aspirational. There's quite few people on no, we cannot. And there are very good reasons to stand on no, we cannot, as there are to stand on all of these places. But I usually encounter more people there, which just tells us something about the people who've chosen to become part of Economy of Francesco. Indeed,
I can only agree with that. And now the difficult part of, we're trying to make it do a miracle here, but the difficult part here is I've asked also to write a comment on why you have chosen one or the other. So you can do that by simply pushing the button, ask a question, and then write, for instance, 3 because blah, blah, blah.
And let's start with some yes, we cans, Carlo. Can you give us just a couple of 2 or 3 reasons why people have said yes, we can?
Okay, so if there is somebody there that wrote yes, we can, vote again. If you can, leave your comment. I'm trying to make this work. You help me meanwhile, Kate. You keep talking and I'm going to dig into the comments.
So while you're doing that, and I'll just say, not knowing who has voted, what I often find in the classroom when it's people together, and I teach a very international group of students, I often find the people who say, yes, we can, will actually be obviously a very optimistic group, often believing in transformational possibilities, often believing in transformational technologies for example, renewable energies. People who say we can't may be looking at the hard data on the science, may be looking at the timelines and saying we can't do it by 2050, or may say, turn back to some of the challenges. They think it's an issue of population, or they think it's an issue of politics or of power or inequalities. And I'm always interested actually in the ones who say we shouldn't even be aiming for the donut, we should aim for something else, because I'm always curious to hear what the ideas are that are in there. But let's hear something from all of those 4 spaces.
Yes, I'm still struggling. I might have to give up on my experiment because meanwhile I have received dozens and dozens of other questions.
Okay.
To dig into.
So, well, if we won't be able to go into it, then
here we go. I have a number 2.
Okay.
Number 2, because we must bring everyone with us, even if they at first do not believe.
Oh.
That's a number 2.
So we should aim for it anyway. And that's just a really interesting point, that so again, this is an exercise I did in the first class of the first day of the first term with my students, my environmental change and management students, last October. And I got them to take a stand in the room, and there were people in all the 4 places. And then we just said, this is a very extraordinary moment in the world to be focusing on these issues and to be studying these issues and to choose to come and talk about new economy, even if we believe we can't make it. What does it feel like to say, let's aim for something, even if we don't think we'll get there? What does that feel like to us in our heart? What does it feel like to us in our heart to believe, I believe we can do it, but I don't know if we will do it. I believe we can do it, but I don't know if we will, because I don't know if we'll change power. The frustration that's there. What does it feel to say, I don't think we can do this? What does that feel like in your heart that I've chosen to show up? I'm at this webinar. I care about these issues and I don't think we can do it. And actually, I will say that there were some tears that day, because people are saying, what is it like to grow up and to be a student and to be a young professional in an era where we hold these goals passionately, but it's not even, I don't even believe we can reach them. So therefore, what is it I'm reaching for? Is this somebody under number 3 saying we should aim for something else?
Yes.
The donut is good, but it is not measurable or not quantifiable to transform it into policy. That's my great, okay, I'm going to convince you, my friend. So it is measurable. In fact, the red donut that you see in the middle of that picture is totally quantified at the global scale. And there's a wonderful website that has downscaled the donut to the national scale. It's called, and I'll put it in the chat box, if you Google Good Life, Leeds University, Dan O'Neill, and Andrew Fanning. If you Google some of those words, you will find an amazing website where they've downscaled the donut to the national scale. And we see that all high-income countries are doing relatively well on meeting the needs of all people, massively overshooting planetary boundaries, whereas most low-income countries don't touch the planetary boundaries, but are falling very far short on meeting people's needs. We're now downscaling it to the city level. One more thing out of my Mary Poppins bag. Here is a donut portrait for the city of Amsterdam, which we produced, was published in April. It's online. If you go to my website, my name, Kate Raworth, my most recent blog is about this portrait. And we have done a downscale donut for the city of Amsterdam, asking here, for example, what does it mean for the people of Amsterdam to live well? What are their aspirations and what's the status against that? And we looked across social and ecological, local and global. So for the person who asked this question, I totally agree that it needs to be quantifiable and measurable to turn it into policy. And actually, the most exciting work I've been involved in over the last year is doing this. And we launched this in Amsterdam, and we've got a complete overflow of interest from people and places and cities and neighborhoods and countries, from Costa Rica to Bangladesh to Dublin to Liverpool to Delhi, saying we want to do it. So we are turning it into a tool for policymakers. It doesn't come out as one number so simple and easy as GDP, but I think we all now know that the danger of one number, that it doesn't catch all that's valuable in life. So I don't know if we would see a little blue dot flying now if that person was convinced, but we are quantifying it.
That's wonderful. Voila, this is how the picture looks right now. You don't want me to go back and dig into the comment just because I've been sweating. That part.
No worries.
It's wonderful to see this picture, and it's wonderful to have, when we discuss this, we wanted to have a conversation here, because the idea is really to explore all the concerns in all the 4 corners of the stand, because all of them bring insights, all of them bring.
And I know that there are many graduate students, there may be postgraduate students, people who get to teach other students and get to run workshops and seminars. And I really recommend to you that you do this exercise. It's so simple. You just share that one slide. If you have introduced the concept of the donut, share that slide. Invite people to stand in the 4 corners of the room, push back all the chairs, put your laptops away. Let's just get into our bodies and take a stand. And then you stand in the middle of the room and you go up to people and you say, why are you standing here? And then go to the opposite corner. Why are you standing here? And the intensity of debate, and we stand in one corner. Can we persuade anybody to join us? Can you motivate someone to come from there to here? What would motivate you to go from here to there? you could have a conversation for a whole hour. So I would really encourage anybody who has the opportunity to run workshops with other students or with policymakers or business leaders or community groups. This is a really great tool for helping recognize the diversity of our views and for helping people actually express how they feel about the future of the world and the very different motivations that bring us here, even though we all recognize these times are very troubled.
Yes, indeed. I really, again, I cannot stress any longer the importance of entering in those conversations. I feel this is a moment in history. I mean, my life is whatever it is. I only lived these few years, but I feel it's really a very important moment in our life where meaningful conversations can move mountains, because it's the moment, I keep saying, where the system has shown all its vulnerability. People in power have shown all their vulnerability, and somehow this means a leveling playing field. It means that whoever is able to put their imagination, their enthusiasm, their communities ahead and get to do that work, the future is a blank sheet. It's all to be designed now, and we know that the current leader, the current systems are there. They have shown their vulnerability. So it's really so important to engage in meaningful conversation and to push in that direction. So I think you had the ball. I'm
gonna get it back to you. Here you go.
Thank you. Here we go. Thanks. Because we have, you need to take a breath, Kate.
No, come on. I'm a keen ping pong player. Keep going, Carlo.
Good. No, I'm just, I'm a big man here playing ping pong. I thought I'm just winning, but no, you're still there and standing. So let's see where the next question, group of questions will take us. So there were quite a few questions on policies. And again, I try to a little bit take a little summary there on those questions. And question number one, and again, I invite everybody on Mentimeter, please keep voting. Question number one, what would be some very effective laws that could support the donut model? And that was, there were actually a lot of questions about how can the law help the donut, and what is the role of the law and in making this work. Okay, so that's one kind of way to summarize all of them. And then the second question, do you think that universal basic income is a suitable policy to help redistribution of wealth? And then the third question that is struggling a little bit there in the graph, some say that renewable energy is non-profitable in terms of energy invested in building the infrastructure. What do you think? It's interesting that there is very little votes on there, and yet there was recently this very famous new documentary that Michael Moore has created, People on the Planet, something like that. It was seen by 1.5 million people after one day, and it was going to be free for the whole month of, I think, of May or until June. And it's a very controversial documentary that tells how we have to be very careful about any new green economy, because there's the same people behind it and it doesn't work. So I thought this question was coming from there, but just to make a point around that. Anyway, here are the three questions. People are continuing. There's over 123 people that have already voted. I'll do like this. I'll let you pick. You want to go for majority, for middle, for minority?
Well, the first two are very closely related. So I'm gonna go for the first one. I agree that laws matter hugely. I mean, I studied economics because I thought that was what would equip me to help transform economic systems, and gradually over time realized that actually law, of course, the regulations are what a very important part of what shaped the economy, what shaped the public sector, what shaped the private sector. So it's the laws that actually create the regulatory design in which companies work. So first to say that many countries have very good laws, they're just not implemented. And so one of the first tasks is to implement the laws that exist. And I'm a big fan of Client Earth, which is an amazing group of lawyers who use the existing laws of countries and take them to court. They took the UK government to court for failing to implement its own carbon policy. They take many countries to court on, and Earth is the client. It's called Client Earth because they treat Earth as the client. They represent her, and they just use the law of the country and the judges and the legal system of the country and take the government to court. And it's very powerful. So let's recognize that there are many good laws out there. Implementation is what matters. I think if we had legal powers in play at the global system, I think we need a law of ecocide, preventing which the campaign of Polly Higgins campaigned for. So for the International Court of Justice, is that ecocide would become a crime against humanity and the earth, because now we recognize that we depend upon the living earth and she is our life support system and we are part of her. When the international courts were created back last century, we did not have this worldview and this understanding of our deep interconnectedness with the web of life. As our understanding changes, so shall our legal frameworks. So that will be a global one. I think national laws, we've seen governments committing to going to net zero carbon by 2050. And I say in the UK, we should be out far, far earlier than 2050. That's so lazy of high income countries that want to just pretend they're like the average Joe in the global economy, when actually the UK, for example, has one of the longest records of industrial carbon pollution. So I want to see countries put in place laws to tighten the budget year after year of carbon emissions, of land use, of fertilizer use, of virgin materials use, so that we're coming back within planetary boundaries and making those constraining budgets for ourselves. And of course, this spurs innovation. When companies get a long, legal, loud message that in 10 years' time, you're not going to be able to use fossil fuels, or you're not going to be able to use non-recyclable plastics, you're not going to be able to use those toxics, chemicals and pesticides, that is what enables them to leap and innovate. So we need regulation so that doing good business is not just a nice to have, it's a niche market, it becomes the ground. I think we also need laws that, underpinning a lot of ownership is the old laws of who owns the land and who owns the housing. I think housing is a very interesting market that actually is a conundrum in that it serves a huge double purpose. On the one hand, housing is a fundamental human right, and people need to be able to afford the rent of a home so that they can keep their family safe and thrive. And the very same housing stock is seen as a wonderful investment opportunity by people who have too much money and are looking for a good return on their capital. Oh, let's put it into housing, let's put it into real estate. And they end up fighting over, or rather in a struggle over the very same house. And it's the investor who tends to win. So I think we need regulations and laws that, for example, limit the ownership of second homes or doubly tax them, so that we preserve housing as a human right rather than an investment desirable. I'm going to come to the basic income question because it's a very prominent question today, and many governments are considering implementing a basic income in a way that never happened before. I remember in about 2003 or 4, when I worked at Oxfam, somebody came from another organization to give a talk to us about the concept of a universal basic income in a country. And I'll be honest, it seemed absolutely off the wall. It was so outside of the realm of what we thought was possible, which to me, again, is valuable to realize that even with our own minds, within our own lifetimes, what's possible can change, not just over decades, it can change overnight. So I deeply believe in distributive design. And yes, universal basic income could be one way of doing that, but I'm not totally committed to say this must be the way, because there are many ways of creating distributive design. And I'll make a final point here. My concern is that we leave the economy deeply unequal, deeply driving the returns of wealth into the hands of a 1% and say, oh, we need some tax from here so that everybody has a basic income. But that leaves the power in the hands of those who are earning that 1% of wealth, and a dependence year after year and government after government that basic income will be paid. I would far rather transform the sources of ownership of wealth in our economy so that instead of being clustered in a few hands, that wealth is distributed anyway in small enterprises that own the power to generate their own electricity, that use Creative Commons licensing, that use desktop 3D printing, that are part of a circular distributed ecosystem. And that means that income itself is generated in a more distributive way, rather than relying on redistributing income. That's my bigger, longer term vision. And I support the possibility and experiments that use a universal basic income now. We need to learn more about it, its full impact in practice. And as it's being trialed in places like Finland, in Kenya, we can see it can have huge effect. I would say in low income countries, I think it's a phenomenally powerful way of channeling money, as long as we don't neglect universal essential services back to health, back to education. It's not about turning everything into a market. We absolutely need the role of the state providing those essentials, and that is distributive design too. Sorry, you got me going. Those are big, important questions.
Oh no, all in my head, I was just saying, you really deserve the ball back. Here we go.
Thank you. Okay.
I mean, that was an amazing answer and so important. I can only agree with that. You got the ball back.
Okay.
Cool.
So last question from me.
You want to ask, and I have really tried to get your most beautiful and mean picture that I had.
Can we see the question without the answers yet, so that people's answers aren't biased by others? Oh my goodness, not that.
Because this time she is asking you a question.
Okay. Which of the following arenas of action do you think has the greatest potential for wider transformation of the economic system? Now, this question is a little bit like what Valentina asked me at the beginning. You know, we know everything matters. But if you had to choose one, which one would you choose? And at a certain point, there's a frustration because I can't choose one. They all matter. They're interdependent. But Valentina did it to me, so I'm going to do it to you. You have to choose one.
So I know, again, we have a 10 seconds of delay with between the Zoom and the YouTube. So the suspense a little bit here.
Okay. So the arenas of action that people can see if they're using Mentimeter are business, government, cities, community organization, and education. And I'll tell you why I've chosen these. They all matter to me. They're all at the heart of what we're doing at Donut Economics Action Lab. In fact, I'll share after if I need to. We've set up Donut Economics Action Lab to turn donut economics from a radical idea into transformative action. And we are working with businesses, with cities, with governments, with teachers, with communities, because we find all of them irresistible spaces of transformation. But I want to know what people on this call think is the must-have space, because that is going to leverage far wider change. If you were part of DEAL, where would you say let's put our energy?
Are you ready?
Yes, I'm really curious about this one.
Let's see.
Oh,
we get in here, quite a beautiful donut. Oh, I'm so blessed. I feel I can see education there at 32%. And you know why I am so keen on education? I actually just realized I think I'm such a celebrity that I did not even introduce myself. My name is Carlo Giardinetti. I work as the Dean of Executive Education at Franklin University, Switzerland. And actually, we had the incredible privilege to have you with us last year and with the other universities in the city here for an incredible event where we work together with citizens, students, professors, the type of multi-stakeholder education that I know you also big fan of. So I'm really happy to see that 32% there. I can see people keep voting. What do you think of this, Kate?
So this is really interesting. So the education, yes, if we're going to change our economies, we need to change the fundamental concepts that are taught. And that's why I wrote Donut Economics. And that's why it's focused on what are the diagrams at the heart of the 20th century mindset and what should we replace them with. It's all about the worldview. And if we can change, I believe if we can change those fundamental concepts, if we can recognize that we are part of a living planet and dependent upon her, then so many other changes follow. So education, absolutely. Of course, I believe in acting in all of these spaces. I'm surprised that cities has got such a small share, and I'll tell you why. Well, no, before I go there, let me say this. In every one of these areas, I've come to believe through experience that how change happens, which is what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to change things. We're not just trying to theorize or talk about it, or we're trying to change. My experience is that the way change happens is that people are inspired by people like them who are doing that thing they thought was impossible. So a teacher is inspired, let me not flatter you too much, Carlo, but a teacher is inspired when they see someone like Carlo running fantastic courses based on new economic thinking. A business leader is not going to be inspired by that. They're going to be inspired by seeing another CEO or business founder who's already saying, yeah, we're regenerative by design. Yeah, we're owned by our workers. Yeah, we have a maximum and minimum salary rate, don't you? A government is going to be inspired not by a business, but by another government who said we're going to pursue not GDP growth, but well-being. Like the governments of Scotland and Wales and Iceland and New Zealand are already doing that. Communities are inspired by, have you seen the make space? Have you seen the organizing? Have you seen the action in the transition towns or other community organizations? And cities are inspired by cities. So all of these matter because they inspire others to make that change. And I've seen that so powerfully. And for me, cities, I would give a little bit more of my vote to cities because they have all of this in it. Cities have government, they have a city municipality, they have businesses for sure, they have universities and schools, and they have community organization. In a way, cities are the place where this happens. And many people feel a stronger identity and pride in their city than they do in their nation. And there's that sense in a city that you're maybe only 2 or 3 steps away from a policymaker, a community leader, a business, that we could actually get in touch. We could even congregate in a space and talk. So for me, cities are a really powerful place of change. And it's been proven by the launch of this Amsterdam report, which has triggered interest from nations, from companies, from community leaders. It's like a space for transformative possibility. And there are some amazing mayors in the world, many of whom are connected through the C40, which is a network of 96 cities where the mayors have said, we commit to transforming this city so that we are part of keeping global heating under 1.5 degrees. And I'm working with them to bring the ideas of donut economics to cities around the world.
And Kate, I would like, so we have our last 8 minutes. Wow, the time flew away, at least for me. There's a few things I want to do in these last 8 minutes. I want to ask, I would like to call back Luca Crivelli, who is actually also the senior coordinator of the Inequality Village of the Economy of Francesco. What you are seeing right now on the left is a wonderful graphic that while we were all talking and discussing, Sophie from Zovism has offered their talent to us today to create these graphics, and we will make it available also later on, and it will help us to draw our conclusions as we speak. And I will also ask Valentina to come back as the junior coordinator of the Inequality Village, and as well as Luigino Bruni, Professor Luigino Bruni, if he can come back as well, to share a some final conclusions all together. So Kate, I know that you are just about, I think the whole world is waiting for that, in June to launch Deal, the platform. Maybe that can be your conclusion, and tell us more about that and give us an appointment for Deal as it's coming soon.
Sure. So I have to say I'm absolutely loving Sophie's illustration. I love the baby that keeps getting bigger. Beautiful. Thank you, Sophie. Yes, so as I said, Donut Economics began as a book, but an idea is only so much if it just sits in a book or in a conversation. Let's turn it into practice. So in probably at the very end of June or early July, we're going to launch Donut Economics Action Lab, which will be an online collaborative platform where we invite businesses and cities and community organizers and educators and governments and anybody to come meet other people who are already putting these ideas in practice. There will be tools, there will be community networks, everybody can co-create. So it's a very distributive design space. If you want to find it now, the website is going to be donuteconomics.org, and you can follow it on Twitter at donutecon. Please join us, because yeah, let's turn this into transformative action. And I've hugely enjoyed this session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Who want to go first? Luca, Valentina, difficult question. Go, Valentina.
I go first because I know that Luca should be the last one. So that's why I go first. So I wish to thank you so much, Kate. I think you were really inspiring, not only for youth people or people working in research, but also for people changing their life and the life of others through their businesses and through their willingness to make this world a better place for every one of us. So thank you so much. If I can just conclude by saying this inspiration should change our lives first, and then the world through our lives. So let's keep it going, keep that going, and let's keep this enthusiasm you shared with us. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you.
Please, Luigino.
Yes, thank you very much, Kate. I was very much inspired by your words, by what you said, and actually I have to meditate more, because I was very enriched by your, not only by the content of your reasoning, but also by the way, the style of communication was much innovative, very rich. Also, thank you to Carlo also for helping you. And I think also the way you're presenting ideas today is theory, is not just something external from, because a new theory is also, a new form is also part of a new theory, in particular in this way, or in this domain of ideas and action. Then I think the Economy of Francesco will be part of your project, of this action, donut action, because we are totally, really, fully interested in your project. Please consider us as your ally, your partners in this very huge, very important, innovative project.
Thank you. That means a lot. Thank you very much.
So, Carlo, it's my turn. The reason why I had to speak last is not because I wanted to be the omega of the discourse, but because I have to announce the next seminars. But before I do that, just few comments. First of all, thank you, Kate, also for the way for the format and the didactical capacity of expressing with your body, with your smile, with your hands, the great ideas that you are spreading in the world. It came to my mind when you spoke about the ecological boundaries that in spite of 2 months of lockdown, in Switzerland, we reached the share of ecological footprint 2020 on May 9th. So this was at least 3 days later than 2019, but only 3 days later. So in spite of this very strong lockdown, we saved just 3 days of impact on the boundaries. Another thing that for me was very inspiring is this idea of the 5 key elements of organizational design. I was really thinking at my organization, the university, where I have a function as a manager, and how much we are ending at the purpose and not really thinking through whether the governance and the way we run the networks are really aligned with the purpose. So it was very inspiring for me also to think through my personal life.
Great.
So maybe I announce the next seminars, and then I give you back the microphone for the last statement, because you deserve to be the omega of this webinar. So the next seminars of our series will be in June. We will have a seminar with Jeffrey Sachs, I think on the 5th of June, and the second seminar with Fritjof Capra, June 12th. So it will be a continuation of this inspiring way of dreaming of a new, different world after COVID that we are doing with all the Economy of Francesco young people. So Kate, please take the floor for the final conclusion.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's been
just one word. I want to really thank all the people connected, all the young of the Inequalities Village that have supported us with lots of questions in the past days and weeks, and the thousands of people that are connected through YouTube that I could look at. This is 1 hour that is a treasure, 1 hour and a half, a treasure for all of us. And the real work starts as soon as this webinar ends, and we go out there and we practice what inspired us. So thanks to everybody who joined us today. Kate.
Yeah, and I wanted to say that thank you to everybody who is answering these questions and making it interactive. We can use technologies to overcome extraordinary distance, and we must keep doing so. And I want to thank Carlo for inventing Zoom ping pong. I very much hope that you'll be playing it with Jeffrey Sachs and Fritjof Capra. And I really love this initiative of the Economy of Francesco. It's clearly been a huge inspiration to so many people since the Laudato Si. And we need leaders in government, in faith, in communities who provide purpose and direction. And so I want to say thank you for creating this community, because together we can start forging that new direction. And again, thank you, Sophie, for this beautiful, beautiful image of capturing the story of what we've discussed today.
Thank you, everybody. And it ends here. I don't have the end button, but I know somebody does. Again, thank you, and see you soon.